Okay, we're on. Go on then, say the thing.
Really? Do I have to? Alright then. What are you making this week, Carl?
Funny you should ask, Mrs. Hobbyhole. You see, while the rest of the internet may have moved on, I can't seem to get past what is undoubtedly one of the most raw, emotional scenes
Here we go again.
ever committed to film.
I mean, it was pretty good and everything, but...
It was a masterpiece, I tell you.
Wait, where are you going with this?
Isn't it obvious? I'm gonna make a Bowser diorama. Hey everyone, welcome back to the flaming lava pit that is my hobby hole. And we'll start today's build by making something I've never made before, a grand piano. Except it's not so grand, in reality quite small, but still grand piano. To begin, I'll print out the stencil I made on Procreate onto cardstock. And just to be clear, when I said that I made the stencil or template, what I mean is I googled one and traced over it. But plagiarism aside, once we've cut out all the parts, with a hobby knife, we'll reinforce everything with some craft foam. Then we'll start sticking it all together before reinforcing it again with some balsa wood. So as you can imagine, this thing is solid. It's not going anywhere. At this point I realised that our piano is carrying a little bit too much round back, so some quick surgery will shed the unnecessary bulk. And look, I'm not trying to discriminate against pianos. All pianos are beautiful no matter what their size. Hashtag pianos have feelings too. But in the name of accuracy, Bowser's piano is pretty long and thin. Anyway, we'll carve out some legs using some more balsa wood, and then slap on a primer coat of black paint. And since I don't have the time, the willpower, or the brain power to individually sculpt each piece of the internals of a piano, I decided just to print out a picture of the internals of the piano. Hashtag all insides of pianos are beautiful too. Then we'll stick the lid thing in place, and that's the basic structure of the piano sorted. All that's left to do is the keys. To make these, I'll grab some rolled out Super Sculpey and start to etch out the keys with a hobby knife. And yes, even if you're only remotely familiar with a piano, you'll notice I've not sculpted nearly enough keys. But I won't tell if you don't. Now I want to make it look like Bowser's really playing this thing, as opposed to just his hands hovering over it or something. So I'll go back and cut out the keys where his fingers are going to land, cut them diagonally along their length, and then squidge it all back together. Then we'll stick on some smaller clay fingers, which will eventually be the black keys, otherwise known as sharps and flats. Look at me, I know my technical terms, using Google like a pro. Anyway, once we've baked it, we'll slap on some Vallejo ivory as well as some flat black. Next up, Bowser's going to need a stool to sit on. So we'll grab some more balsa wood, sand it down so it's not all sharp for Bowser's tush. We'll attach some clay and shape it ready to receive Bowser's buns of steel. These pinheads will make for some excellent studs. And then we can add various lines and creases and dents to give it a leathery effect. And with that done, we can move on to the main man himself. We'll start with a little armature wrapped in tin foil, or aluminum foil for our American friends. I love you guys, you're so loud, but in a nice way. I'll quickly remember that Bowser's got a massive tail around his back, where tails normally stick out? I don't know. So we'll add that on using some thick armature wire. And with his shaping and core structure sorted with the armature, we can start to build out his limbs using clay. And with Bowser being the muscle-bound edgelord that he is, I quickly realised that even when you think you've added enough clay, probably more clay is needed. So we'll keep bulking him up until he's just about the right King of the Koopas size, and then we can start adding some of the details like the claws on his feet, the ribbing on his front, as well as some pulsating veins on his arms. Whilst we're here, we can add some scarring and battle damage, because who doesn't love battle damage, before moving on to sculpting his scales. Now, like any guy, I love me a bit of scaling, but I haven't got the time or the patience to sculpt each individual one. So using this tool with a metal ball end, we'll stab loads of various sized craters into this piece of rolled out clay. We'll then stick it onto this bit of doweling I cut down to size, and there you have it, one scale making tool. Next up, Bowser needs a head, so we'll stab 2 eye sockets into this piece of clay, and then add some eyeballs. But in reality his eyes are going to be closed, so we'll put some more clay over these eyeballs, and sculpt in some fleshy eyelid lines. Then we can start work on his monster eyebrows, before moving on to shaping his snout. And while we're on that subject, I'm not really sure how I feel about Bowser's snout, or his whole mouth-nose area in general. It takes me on a roller coaster of emotion. Let me explain. You see, his snout area itself, very cute, very boopable. You just want to smudge it between your fingers. But then we move on to his chin and jawline. Rugged, chiseled, a bit intimidating. But then you add in his petrifying, killer, bone-crunching teeth, and I just don't know how to feel.
Nah, I get ya. I have that same battle every day.
What do you mean? I don't get it. Anyway, with his teeth and everything else in place, we just need a stick on his horns. Then we can place his head onto the rest of his body. Now we can move on to his shell. To do that, we'll mark out all of the shell sections. Try saying that 10 times fast. And then we'll layer on more clay cut to the size of these sections to give it some needed depth and definition. And then to shape it a bit more and blend it all in, we'll skim off the edges using our hobby knife. And once all the segments are done, we can put a long clay sausage all around the edge of the shell. Then we'll do some detailing work. And finally, smoosh these spikes into place before blending it all in. At this point, Bowser's still missing his signature mullet, so we'll go back and add that. And then we can move on to the final part of Bowser, which is his hands. Which, if I'm honest, I was putting off till last. Because, well, one, just like drawing, hands are quite difficult to do. Ask any artist and they'll tell you that drawing hands puts the fear in them. And two, because he's pushing down on the keys on the piano, the placement of the fingers need to be quite precise. But with his hands done, and his questionable black leather straps fitted, it's time for a painting montage. Let's play something that reflects Bowser's personality. What do you reckon? Bit of rock metal? Yeah! I love me a good montage. Plus, you know, it saves me some time in recording, and it saves your ears from bleeding having to listen to me drone on the whole time. So it's a win-win situation, really. So with Bowser painted, we can now move our attention to the base. We'll start by cutting some XPS foam into a hexagon shape, and then get real friendly with it by beating it within an inch of its life. Then we'll cut some strips of thin craft foam and stick these around the outside. And off camera, I'll attach a bunch of spikes on there as well. And at this point, I should have called it a day, but me being me, I'm never satisfied with the basics. I've always got to try and go one step further, and that's usually when things go wrong. So this is what happened. You see, I had a load of translucent Fimo lying around, which as the name suggests, goes translucent once you've baked it. So I thought, why not use this clay to make a vision, a spectre if you will, of Bowser's one true love, Princess Peach. So I made a head sculpt, using some blues and purples blended together, and then as you do, attach that head sculpt to a torso. Things were going great, but then I guess I woke up the next day and chose stupidity, because life just isn't hard enough already. I needed to make Princess Peach's flowing dress, specifically the skirt part, and I thought this top section of a soda bottle is just the perfect shape. I could lay some clay over that, you know, clay that needs to be put in the oven to cure, over some thin plastic that easily melts and burns in the oven. What could go wrong? And I also wanted Peach's skirts to have a bit of a color gradient going on. So following a YouTube tutorial, I combined two cone-shaped bits of clay together and put them through the clay grinder. But obviously this type of clay isn't suitable, because as you can see, this mess came out. But I'm not one to stop and start again, perhaps with a better, more well thought out method. Oh no, once I've started doing something stupid, you better bet I'm gonna see it through to the end. But as per the tutorial, you keep folding up the clay and putting it repeatedly through the clay grinder. And the clay just kept coming out more brittle, more broken, more sticky. But regardless, after a while, I managed to produce this, and it wasn't looking too bad. And then I put it in the oven. But at this stage I'd run out of the translucent Fimo, so I had to make the best of what I got. So we'll grab some of this gloss varnish and slap it on thick, in the hopes that it'll hold it all together and seal any of the cracks. Then we'll attach Princess Peach to the end of the piano using some more XPS foam. Then we'll cover the foam up with a swirling mist of cotton wool, which we can also handily use to cover up some of the cracks. Then we can airbrush some lighter blue shades onto Peach to try and bring her all together, make her a bit more uniform. Before airbrushing again some shades of blues, greens and purples onto the cotton wool. Then it's just a matter of making Bowser's piano look all shiny like with some more of that gloss varnish, putting Bowser in place. Oh, and we mustn't forget a little framed picture of Peach. And with that in place, I think we're just about done here. Hey, so we made it to the end of another video. That was fun, wasn't it? If your fun receptors were suitably stimulated, please consider smacking that like button. And also, if you're not following this channel already, please consider subscribing. If you've got any ideas for future projects you'd like to see me do, please stick them down in the comments. But until we meet again, cheers and have a good one. Shell sections, shell sections, shell sections, shell sections. Ugh.